Good morning, everyone. How are you all? Hope you all are keeping well and utilizing your time wisely in studies. Students, as we know, we have already covered up the first part of the chapter, The Adventure, in our first video. Students, in today's video class, we shall study the second part of the chapter. So let's get started. But first of all, students, let's very quickly recapitulate what has happened so far in the chapter. Students, as we know, Professor Gaitonde was traveling from Pune to Bombay by Jija Mata Express, a train which was faster than the Deccan Queen. And student, as he was crossing towns and villages, he met a man named Khan Sahib who talked about his business and chatted about several things. Students, they got off at Victoria Terminus station, which was neat and clean. And students, it had British officers, Parsis, and Anglo-Indian staff all around. So he was a student confused actually as to how the East India Company was ruling the country, as according to his facts they had fled away after the events of 1857 only. So students, he went to Hornby Road and noticed that the shops were different. And students, he entered the Forbes building and inquired about Mr. Vinay Gaitonde. But as checked by the receptionist, students, no such man had ever worked there by the name of Vinay Gaitonde. So, student, he went to the town hall and sat in the reading room. And students, he took 5 books there. He took 5 books related to the history, and he decided to go through them. He read them one by one and checked how the facts had changed. And he started investigating from the period of Ashoka to the period of the third battle of Panipat. Right. So now, students, let's begin this part. Students, according to the fifth volume of the book, Bahu Sahib Banchi Bhakar, he found out that Marathas had won the battle of Panipat and spread their influence all over India after that. And students, he was confused as it was different from what he knew so far. So after the victory, India was moved to the path of democracy. Now there was democracy was coming in India. So there were no longer any kings and ruling and democratic parties. Democratic parties had been set up now. Now that kings and ruling etc. were not there. Now the professor started liking India as he kept reading further about it, but it was different from the one he believed he saw. Now this country knew how to stand on its feet. And a student, it was no longer a slave country. It was no longer slave under the white man. So what happened was, as he was going through the book, the librarian told him to finish since they were going to close the library. And student, it was 8 o'clock and he asked about carrying the books with him as he would return the book the next morning. And student, he slipped the Bakar book into his left pocket by mistake only. He slipped that Bakar book into his left pocket. And when he reached guest house, he checked into a guest house and had his dinner. When he reached there, he checked. He decided to walk towards Azad Maidan. And a student, when he reached there in Azad Maidan, he noticed a large crowd of people going towards a pandal. A lecture was going on, but he noticed something unusual. Student, the presidential chair was empty. How could it? How could it? How can it be? Okay, that the presidential chair was empty. And student, the speaker was talking, and the crowd was continuously moving inside and outside. Student, so he could not control himself, and he moved towards the stage, and he sat on the chair. Let's see what audacity he did. He sat on the presidential chair. The crowd was taken aback. The crowd was surprised and started asking him, right? Asking about and asking him to get up and move away. But students, he tried to talk to them, but they started actually throwing several objects at him, such as tomatoes and eggs and etc. And soon the crowd moved towards him to push him away, and he was nowhere to be seen. He was physically removed from there, students. Now, when he woke up, he was in a hospital and he saw Rajendra Prasad standing in front of him. He narrated the whole sequence of events that took place, and Rajendra listened to him quite amazed. The professor was confused as to where he was and if he had been in a coma for the past 2 days or not. Where was he actually? So what was the experience he just had? Was it real or not? Rajendra explained to him that it had happened because of two theories: catastrophe theory and lack of determinism in quantum theory. Student, that's catastrophe theory states that a small change in any situation can result in a shift in behavior. So, students, in reality, Marathas lost their leader Bhau Sahib and Vishwas Rao, and hence they lost the battle. But professor saw that the bullet missed and Vishwas Rao was not dead. So professor then showed him torn page of the Bakar book also that he had in his pocket. Rajendra read it carefully and told him that realities can be different for different people. What he thought had happened is a catastrophic theory, catastrophic experience. So student Rajendra told him that in case of electrons, one cannot predict which path the electron takes at a point of time. So he told him that it is lack of determinism in quantum theory and explained to him, and he just explained that what it meant. So in one world, student, the electron may be found here and in another. So it may be found in it may be found in another place, right? So it may be different. It may be at different location, the electron. So once the observer knows about the correct placing, students, correct placing, right? If of the electrons in every world, it might happen that in an alternative world exists it may happen that an alternative world also exists at the same time. So hence the professor was in two different worlds at the present time, at the same time. This was the thing, this was the story, that the professor was in two different worlds at the present time. He had real life experience in an alternative reality, and he came back from another world. But both the worlds had different histories and different sets of events. So student, the professor wanted to know why he was the one to make the transition. Then student Rajendra told him that at the time of collision actually with the truck, the professor was thinking about the catastrophe theory and its role in the war. He was also thinking about the battle of Panipat at the moment. So the neurons in his brain acted as a trigger and made the transition. So student, the professor was in that alternative world for the last 2 days. So this is the story of this chapter. Hope you have understood it. Thank you, class.